Well, now there are all sorts of ways that we can share some items. These items are from a publication called the Humor Digest, and I've gotten it for many years for different reasons. I think of some things that are in there that I don't quite know what to do with here. For example, you go to school and you learn to express yourself, don't you? When you go to school, you learn to express yourself. Then you get married and you learn to keep quiet. That just might be true. I'm not sure, but it could be. Well, then I have one other here that I want to share with you. This is a favorite story about the time that Yogi Berra called him for advice on changing diapers. He had a youngster apparently in his family, and he wanted some advice on when and how to change the diapers. And so Jimmy Pearsall has this. He says it's his favorite story because Yogi Berra called him for advice on changing diapers, and this is what he told him. I told him it's easy. You just lay the diaper out like a baseball diamond, and then you put the kid's bottom on the pitcher's mound, and you pin first base to third base, and then you slide second base into home plate and pin them. Oh, but I also told him one other thing. If it rains, there's no postponement. I like those things. A little bit of fun, a little bit of humor. And they all put together. We do like a little bit of fun, a little bit of humor once in a while, don't we? I think we do, and that can make quite a difference. Sure. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's why I think of... Well, this story was told by one of the fellows. He would go to Las Vegas from time to time, and anyway, he decided he wasn't going to gamble anymore. No. Well, why aren't you going to gamble? At Las Vegas, you'd still give it a good... No, I'm not going to gamble anymore. Why not? He said, I lost $35 playing the ice machine at the hotel. Everything against. Well, that's enough for now. Back with you next week. Well, I know that we all run into problems with regard to learning how to swim, how to do certain things the right way. I think there are all sorts of times. But this is told that the father was asked once by the daughter, why didn't you ever learn to swim? And old dad said, well, it's never been an hour since I last ate. So you keep on eating, you keep on staying off, huh? Well, I think those are pretty good ones for all of us to share. These are from a little booklet called the Humor Digest. Yeah, I don't make up this stuff now, please understand. This is for the Humor Digest, which many years ago came out quite regularly. I don't know if it's still out or not. If it is, well, that's good. It's a good one. It's a good thing. There's no question about it. And finally, for this one, a man obviously in bad condition from the night before he stepped up to the bar. He sputtered through some trembling lips. He said, give me something for a hangover, please, something tall, cold, and full of gin. And a drunk who was standing next to him said, sir, you are referring to the woman I love. That's right. Tall, cold, and full of gin. Back with you next week.
And then hit the play and test. It's working.
Well, this old retired English professor at Mount Union College has to say right now that there are many, many, many continued illustrations of how not to say something. Yeah, we can write them down on a theme for freshman English class, but it can happen in many other ways, too. For example, what are we going to do with, these are welfare applicants sending letters, and this was in a newspaper item listing some of the letters from the people making applications for welfare help. For example, I cannot get sick pay. I have 6 children. Can you tell me why? And Here's one. You have changed my little boy to a girl. See, this was in some correspondence, apparently, and lining it up here for the welfare application. Something came out the wrong way. And so the person replied, you have changed my little boy to a girl. Will this make any difference? Well, how about this? I have given birth to a boy weighing 10 pounds. I hope this is satisfactory. Meaning, I don't think the pounds are what the factor was all there, something else. But anyway, but we do have, have all sorts of ways in which we can get different interpretations. Just for a simple little interpretation as this, suppose somebody says, yeah, I found a book on Main Street. Was it a book, written about Main Street, or was the book found on the street, lying on the street? See, there are different interpretations we can have there. So, well, how we use language, how we use the words makes a big difference. And, of course, sometimes, not always. So, well, you see here, I wouldn't want to. I'll conclude with this one, but it does show you in this lovely place where you went to the restaurant, and they had special tables with all the different foods on. You go to the tables and get the foods. And the waitress said, and this is true because I was there, I was one of the people in the party there at the table, and the waitress said, well, pointing out the different places in the room where the foods were, just pick your own food. She said, and get your salads in the rear. I hope that she just meant someplace in the room. Well, this old retired English prof says we got to be careful how we say things. Back with you next week. See, and we'll see if we can find a few more by then. Dear friends, I know it's easy just to say hello to each other and to chat a little bit about something that you're all familiar with. If you get around to writing a poem, of course, keep in mind that anybody who reads the poem does not necessarily know everything you know, and or maybe knows a great deal more. But we have to be careful about how we're going how we're going to say things. Now, suppose, for example, that we want to talk about a nice little scene. Something very pleasant about trees and birds that were there, and it was out in the open. It was so very nice. And we're writing a poem about it. The team danced along the bluffs. A little chirper, a limb full of leaves in common timing. The birdie cheeped and sang, and the elastic child of limb bounced in tempo. Now let's just stop at that point, the elastic child of limb. It's the tree there, of course. The bird singing is going up and down just a little bit. If he's singing and moving himself a little bit, and the little limb goes up and down. Yes, and the limb is in tempo. Now notice we could have said that it was the small limb or that it was just a limb. No, the limb wouldn't bounce if it were an inch and a half thick, would it? No, not for some little bird on it. Of course not. But we need to say that it's small. And so instead of saying small, we might say, and this is what was done, the elastic child of limb bounced in tempo. The elastic child. Well, that may be going a little too far in describing it, but it's the type of thing. For writing poetry, we want to come up with good descriptions. But we don't want to use too many words. No, of course not. And then, of course, we're sometimes also with poetry. In this poem, I'm going back to the same poem, but it does make a reference here, perhaps a little more than what was technically true. The team danced along the bluffs, a little chirper, the limful of leaves in common timing. Birdie cheeped and sang, and the elastic child of limb bounced in tempo. Birdie Beak went side to side, and leaves followed. Then looking down to the waters with branch and swing as well, they were alike, sharing rhythm of the moves. And then the birdie left, swept through the sky, and the tree smiled, knowing that they would dance again. A tree. Now, here, see, we're giving special interest to the tree here. We're saying that the tree could smile. Well, to see the bird had come on, a little limb out there that was elastic. We referred to it in the poem as an elastic child of limb. And when the bird was there, well, then the limb could go up and down a little bit, and the bird could be moving, and forcing it to do that, but doing it in a kind of almost a dance was going on. See, and that's what how the poem began. The team danced along the bluffs. Now, we're not talking about a football team or a baseball team. The team is simply the two of them, the limb and the bird. The team danced along the bluffs, a little chirper and a limb full of leaves in common timing. See? The birdie cheeped and sang, and the elastic child of the limb bounced in tempo. And it goes on from there, and I'm not going to reread the whole poem, but that's the way it began, by pointing out that there's movement, there's activity, there is, shall we say, rhythm. And that's what counts with the bird and with the tree limb. Is that very important? Is that something that's just going to make the difference between nations and how they... No, not necessarily. But all poems do not have to be massively discussing everything about the world in one poem. Just go ahead and well, just to have some good words being utilized to describe something. Well, it's the way it happens, the way we love. And here we have a little poem that I wrote some years ago called Him. I don't mean that these are the greatest things ever written, but in order to share thoughts about them, I think that one can do it about his own trying to do the right thing. A little poem titled Him. As petals open to the light with plan and purpose stirred, my thought can be in posture right, receptive to God's word. Not mere wish or idle pose, but what's sincere I do, for just as beauty comes to the rose, the truth uplifts my view. My joy this day to open wide my mind within above, to grow in grace, in God abide, to flower in God's love. Now the whole poem is based on that last line, to flower in God's love. Flower is being used as a verb there, isn't it? But you see the rest of the poem talked about the flower, the petals opening to the light, sets the tone for it. And yet here, to flower in God's love is a use of a word as a verb when ordinarily, isn't it, just a noun? The flower, there's a flower over there. Ooh, that's a pretty flower, and so on. But here you do a little more with it. Well, we all can. Even if we're writing a freshman English theme, we can say something maybe a little differently, and it can be very effective. Oh yes, it can be, if we do it the new way, a good way. That's it for right now. Now, this old retired English professor likes to have examples of how to say things the right way. And one way to learn how to say them the right way is to find out something that's said the wrong way. Here are some sentences from letters that were maintained, and these were written by people who were trying to say something right. I just want to share one of them with you here. But in answer to your letter, I have given birth to a boy weighing 10 pounds. I hope this is satisfactory. Was the boy weighing 10 pounds, or was the letter writer weighing 10 pounds? Would either one be satisfactory? Well, that's something. Are we saying things effectively? Are we? That's what counts, of course. One of the classics of all of that, of course, is somebody who wrote, "An incompetent interior decorator is rotten to decor." Well, now, wait a minute. Decor is not the core. It is DECOR. Yes. And he is rotten to decor? Well, maybe it means he's not very good. We've called him an incompetent interior decorator. Is rotten to decor. Well, not to the core, but to the how to decorate. DECORATE. To be careful how we put things together in some way. And one of my classic, I just love this one. I've got a dog who's very obedient. I think I shared this in another one of my little programs here, but I have to share it again because I think it's just so good. I'm chuckling over it, but it does show you how we interpret what is the words. Makes a big difference, and so the dog interpreted in the dog's way. A very obedient dog, no question about it. And the park bench had a sign that said wet paint, which means, of course, that they had just painted the bench. Yes, that can be wet paint. The dog did. The dog wet the paint. I don't have to explain that, do I? I certainly don't intend to. But this dog did just what the sign said, wet paint, okay? And so he wet it. That's just a little bit. See those simple little lines, wet paint, yes. Well, many years ago I wrote a little poem called, and the title is longer than the poem, dedicated to the pretty young thing in the freshman reception line. Are you ready? Fair hair, but fear here. Yes, one of the things you might fear is that campus radio station might be used for some old retired professor to share things about how we say them. I trust anyway that this wasn't the worst thing of the day that happened to you. Back with you next week. But just to start, well, sometimes people who are professors at a college, sometimes they think about their students and they think about what the students had written. And particularly, this is in English, and of course that's me that I'm talking about. I'm a professor for 30-some years of English at 2 different schools. But the point is, when my students would start to write poems, I was so appreciative of the ones who would write about something specific, something to tie it down with, not just generalizations all the time. And can you imagine, this was placed on my desk one time by the student, the author, and he just left it there. He was saying creative writing. He just left it there. And I realized that it was a poem that was titled Doorknob. Well, now, what can you say about poetry that has to do with doorknob, or how can you use poetic devices into the... Well, let's find out. Hey, doorknob, what can you tell me? I can tell you, boy, about flesh and grease and sweat, and a woman gently peeking in on her sleeping baby girl, slams and twists, and the problems we had housebreaking the dog, pulls and kicks, and the oldest son home from the army. Surprise, Mom! I love you! That's the end of the poem. No, it doesn't have the rhyme schemes in that, but do you see that the doorknob is an important consideration? It can be something about the grease or the sweat that's on the flesh itself. It can be about a little baby in the family you're checking up on. It can be about letting the dog outdoors. It can be, and then a member of the family who has not been seen for quite a while. And the little statement, I love you. the very important statement. Now, that kind of thing in a poem. Well, the poem, yes. Poem was written by Tom Gorham, and it's simply titled Doorknob. Now, just to say doorknob may not get all of the impression. Oh, I want to read that poem. I want to read that poem. No. But it's the specifics that are in it and the overall conclusion of the circumstances that the poem deals with. Now, you see, poetry can be very, very brief, just as sentences can be very, very brief. Suppose you just say me, period. That isn't much of a sentence, is it? Suppose you say me, period, you, period. Well, maybe that's a little better. If you say me love you, then that's a little more clear, but it shouldn't be me love, it should be I love you. That makes the sentence effective. And of course, those things are parts of freshman English classes and other considerations through grade school, high school, and college. But it just comes down to the questions that we have opportunity to express ourselves in a variety of ways and to try to come up with the way that we think is most helpful, whatever the circumstance may be, whatever it is that we're trying to say to somebody else, of course. And I think a little thing like that I just shared with you, the little poems and me love you, that's good. It's specific, although it's the wrong phrasing. We should say I love you. Well, let us see. Should we say I love you more than any other person in the whole world, east and west and north and south? Is that necessary to use all those words? Good expression is using effective words and not overdoing it. Not saying too many things, but just the one specific reference that ties in with the point that is to be made. That's what counts. All right. Back with you next week. That'll be it for now. There are many ways of expressing something that we want somebody else to know about, and I'm not saying that it always has to be a poem, but the point is that, well, if you can use effective words, go ahead and use the effective words. The little poem that a fellow wrote some years ago called Before the Dawn. Now, well, what happens before the dawn? Well, it's before the sunshine, yeah. Well, everything's dark. Well, you can't see very much at all. Well, you're not thinking about it. Why not? Well, you're going to sleep. That might be the situation. But here's a little poem that is titled Before the Dawn, and just comes up with a conclusion of, well, you might say some generalities, but still, maybe we can tie them together. Before the dawn, the song began, before the sweep of light. No matter if it was moments or more, this backyard bird sang, knowing his melody a harbinger. And I thought, how often only after rewards were given have I sung, but how faith is a song before the dawn. You know the dawn is coming. You can sing before the dawn. That's important. You realize the value of waiting, and yet you don't have to if you just want to read the poem to yourself. Those things count. And that applies to almost anything we say in the classroom. If there's something you want to say about a topic that you've been reading and discussing, well then say it. Say it in the classroom. It may be more helpful that way. It may be of more interest. It may get more response. Possibility, anyway. Doing it that way. Well, now, it's important, I think, to keep in mind the value of poetry but more importantly, the value of specific good words to be used. And I'd just like to suggest a word here that I think is just a fun word made up, but it's a variation of a word, but it's altered from what you've ever heard of it, I think, because it wants to rhyme. It's a simple two-line poem. It only has 3 words in it. It's titled "The Weight Loser's Plea." The Weight Loser's Plea. Render us, slender us. See that? That's all there is to it. Because render goes with slender, they rhyme, and us rhyme, of course, same. Render us, slender us. That's what a weight loser wants to do. We want to be slenderous. How can you be slender? Well, of course, lose some weight. That would help, wouldn't it? So that's how you get the whole poem there. Render us, slender us. Now, of course, to use 2 shorter words, smaller words, and then 1 long word, but they rhyme. Render us, slender us. So there's no reason why we can't go ahead and use it on that basis. Now, suppose that there's a need for some tissue in the house, and you can't find any place for it, but you're arguing and say, well, you should have some more tissue in this house, or you should have some more of this stuff, and so on and so on. Well, what is the argument? What is the discussion about? The tissue issue. Yeah, those 2 words go together. The tissue issue. You can have some good use with words that have the brief use of the words, not real long lines, but just like that tissue issue business. Well, see, I can say that'll be all the program today. I could also say goodbye. I could also say bye-bye. Well, is that B-Y-E, B-Y-E? No, it's B-Y-E, B-Y. Bye-bye, by who? All right, are you ready for it? Bye-bye me. Bye-bye Lyle. Hope to be with you again. There are many ways of expressing ourselves, and I do happen to like poetry, as it is one of those ways, of course. And I trust this will not make everybody change the station, but I would just like to read to you a few poems that I've written that, it's words, and it's interesting. For me, of course, in trying to write them, certainly was interesting to see how I could do and how well I was doing. Well, now, I do have what I call a serious poem, and it isn't, of course. Ah, docile tragedy, how you wait in turgid foam. Ah, silent wave unleashed, waif among the sands. Ah, ego of the hours. Ah, dauntless chiliarch, and yet the murmur of the flute and who frets. Ah, needless weave of time that moves motionless. Ah, steadfast pursuit of the immovable, yet the sandpaper grows. Ah, warm enfolding. Ah, morning savior. Ah, phooey. You can have a little fun writing stuff like that, or should I say junk like that? That can be. I'd just like to read to you a poem that wasn't intended to be the most ridiculous thing, or with the worst words or anything. It's titled Point of View. This young polka dot robin that paused on the green rim of Stonebath, deciding, head cocked in searching, did not know how much I hoped. For him it was a cleansing ritual considered, but my moment hung as I waited and watched his eyes as he debated. Then he plunged, and I reveled in his ordered ways. Beak under, then forward thrust, and up and on to rim, the preening, layering back of folds. Feather engines whirring. Was this affirmation. You may ask, for him it was a needful task of body, made in routine measure. For me, though, it was just insight, but some knowledge and much pleasure. Well, now, doing all kinds of, doing all kinds of writing of poetry, of course, can come about with just a simple little poem that might have a title that's longer than the poem. Yes, here's one that I wrote many years ago. It's titled The New Student. What did we say? Quote, to the pretty young co-ed in freshman English, the opening day of school. Are you ready for the poem now? Fair hair, but fear here. Yes. See, that shows.